Hello, dear students. As a teacher of pharmacology, teaching for decades, I have realized that viva voce always poses anxiety and apprehension among the students as an examinee, and despite the fact that they know many aspects of the subject, there is always a degree of fumbling and confusion during the viva. In order to obviate this difficulty, I have prepared this presentation on viva voce in pharmacology, and the topics for today's discussion are autonomic nervous system and peripheral nervous system. This is my first presentation, and subsequently I will be also uploading the several presentations on various topics in pharmacology. Now, beginning with the topic of ANS and PNS, Viva usually tests knowledge comprehension, analysis of the facts, and application of knowledge as is relevant to the clinical situation. Now, this section particularly includes unique characteristics of the drugs, their actions, and their adverse effects, which are clinically relevant. The objective of this presentation, as I told you earlier, is to clarify concepts and contents of ANS and PNS and to prepare and enable the students to perform well in the viva voce examination, and finally to make most out of the limited time available for interaction with the examiner. Now, ANS and PNS, as you all know, includes the autonomic receptors, the cholinergic and anticholinergic drugs, the adrenergic and anti-adrenergic drugs, the skeletal muscle relaxants, and local anesthetics. Among the skeletal muscle relaxants include drugs which act at neuromuscular junction, drugs which act directly on the muscles, and drugs which are myorelaxant because of central actions. I will be discussing few of the aspects of all these topics. Now, Viva usually begins with the initial interaction and some introduction and statement of facts is done. So this first slide is what is to be stated as true or false. All preganglionic autonomic fibers are cholinergic functionally. Now if this question is asked by the examiner, your answer could be true because all are cholinergic so long as preganglionic fibers are concerned. Now, second point is sympathetic cholinergic fibers which supply eccrine sweat glands have muscarinic receptors. This is an exception that all sympathetic fibers, postganglionic sympathetic fibers are adrenergic, but the sympathetic fibers to eccrine sweat glands are cholinergic functionally. So this is also true. Now, adrenal medulla is innervated by preganglionic fibers. Therefore, it has to be cholinergic, and acetylcholine acting on the nicotinic receptors will be the mediator and neurotransmitter. Now, apocrine Palmer sweat glands are non-thermoregulatory and have alpha-1 receptors. Actually, this is also true because Palmer sweating is adrenergic and occurs usually under stress. However, the eccrine thermoregulatory sweating is cholinergic and therefore it is always blocked by atropine. Later on, you will know that atropine causes dryness and the slight rise in the body temperature. Now, looking to the cholinergic system, muscarinic receptors, the question examiner may ask you is how many types you know. The answer is usually there are known 5 types of the muscarinic receptors. Of them, muscarinic 1, muscarinic 2, and muscarinic 3 subtypes are well studied. We will be discussing these in details. Now, muscarinic 1 located in the CNS and presynaptically in peripheral neurons. Muscarinic 2 are located in heart and exhibit negative chronotropic, dromotropic, and ionotropic action. Muscarinic 3 are located on smooth muscles, vascular endothelia, and exocrine secretory glands. Now, is there any organ or tissue where uninnervated muscarinic receptors are found? Now, this question is posed when certain degree of knowledge is ascertained by examiner, that you know what are muscarinic receptors, what are their location, but you must also know that muscarinic receptor distribution may not be linked with the innervation. Now, one example is uninnervated muscarinic receptors of mostly M3 type are present in peripheral blood vessels because the vagus doesn't reach blood vessel, but receptors are still there in the blood vessels and then it responds. Therefore, it must be known. Now, next question which can be asked is the neurotransmitter at preganglionic autonomic junction is. Now, this is alternative to first slide. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter which acts through nicotinic neuronal receptors. Now, another question which can be asked is name receptors which are present presynaptically at cholinergic junction. Now, when we say cholinergic junction, they can be homotropic or heterotropic. So, muscarinic 2 receptors are presynaptic homotropic receptors. There are others which are heterotropic receptor also. Now, the presynaptic adrenergic receptors are usually alpha 2 receptors and which are inhibitory in nature. That is, they reduce the release of the noradrenaline when they are stimulated. Now, this point is very important. Later on, we will realize why it is important, but this must be known. Now, questions which are related to the effects, pharmacologic actions of acetylcholine can be many. For example, some examiner may ask, what are the important cardiovascular actions of acetylcholine? So, effects on the heart and effects on the blood vessels. Earlier discussed, heart, there is a negative effect, slowing SN nodal, that is bradycardia, slowing heart rate. There is slow conduction, AV nodal conduction, and therefore this is a cardiac action. Whereas vascular actions are clear, and the vascular action is vasodilatation. Now, this is a very peculiar effect of the acetylcholine. So, examiner will ask you, can you explain how vasodilatation occurs with acetylcholine? It is indirect because acetylcholine releases nitric oxide from vascular endothelium, meaning thereby if you remove vascular endothelium, vasoconstriction would occur. When vascular endothelium is damaged or smooth muscles are removed, they will contract. Nitric oxide released from vascular endothelium will activate guanylate cyclase and increases GMP levels, which increase the MLC phosphatase activity that facilitates dephosphorylation of myosin light chain, and therefore vascular relaxation occurs. So this is the intracellular activity when acetylcholine is injected or reaches the blood vessels. Now, a drug of choice in post-operative paralytic ileus is this question relates to choline esters. So the choices may be given or directly it may be asked. So when the choices are given, the choices are pilocarpine, bithanicol, pyridostigmine, and cevimeline. Now these four compounds have been used with a specific purpose. Pilocarpine is a secretagogue, but pilocarpine will cause a lot of the problems when given post-operative paralytic ileus because of its anomalous effect on the blood pressure. Therefore, bithanicol, which has more action on the gut, is used commonly in the name of uricoline, which is a bithanicol is a choline ester that increases the motility of the gut, and this is the drug which is given by injection. Pyridostigmine is a reversible cholinesterase and its uses are different. and it's a slow acting, longer acting drug. And cevimeline is also a cholinergic drug which increases the salivary secretion and lacrimal secretion because it is specifically developed to stimulate glandular M3 receptors. Therefore, the correct answer will be bethanicol. When you explain all these things, the examiner would know that you know the subject very well. Probably this at this time, examiner may stop asking you more questions. Now let us further go. Other way of asking could be they may ask you what cholinergics are used in the treatment of glaucoma, or he may also ask you what are the ocular uses of cholinergic drugs. Now ocular uses include the glaucoma. Details can be discussed on this alone topic, but other indications are accommodative estrophia, that is the strabismus that occurs due to hypermetropia in children, and other uses to break the posterior synechia, and for this it is alternatively given with mediatrix, and finally Horner syndrome. Now if you look at the question is what are the ocular uses of cholinergics except Horner syndrome itself has meiosis as a part, and therefore cholinergics are not indicated in Horner syndrome. So the correct answer is Horner syndrome. When you say all this, the examiner knows that the depth of the knowledge you have is enough. Now another question could be an anti-glaucoma drug which mainly decreases intraocular pressure by increasing uveoscleral flow. Now this is, glaucoma can be treated by two group of drugs. The one which reduces the formation of aqueous humor, and second is which increases the removal from the anterior angle, that is trabecular network or uveoscleral flow. Now this is particular drug which enhances this mainly, and the answer is latanoprost, that is a prostaglandin analog. Now when you reply latanoprost or carboprost or related drugs, then next question obviously is that what are the characteristics of the adverse effects of this drug and what are the advantages of using this drug. I have focused on adverse effect, and the unusual adverse effect of this drug is thickening and darkening of eyelashes upon frequent use of eye drops. So this is very unusual adverse effect of a drug. Now, similar questions can be asked the underlying mechanism of reduction of the intraocular tension by cholinergic or related anti-glaucoma drug as a combined question. For example, how does pilocarpine reduce? The main mechanism of reduction is increased trabecular flow, outflow from the trabecular measure. How does brimonidine, that is alpha-2 agonist, act? Reduces aqueous formation. How does timolol act? Is a multiple actions, but it has decreased aqueous humoral formation from the ciliary epithelium and also has a neuroprotective action. Dorzolamide is topical carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Its main mechanism is by not providing bicarbonate, it reduces formation of the aqueous humor. So this is how a different levels of the actions of drugs can be compared. Now about organophosphate poisoning. What is true about these four options? Oximes reverse muscarinic manifestations of organophosphates. Is it true or false? Oximes reverse peripheral effects mostly. For muscarinics, you require atropine. So this is not true. Oximes reverse CNS effects of the organophosphates. Most oximes is pralidoxime, which does not enter the brain. Obidoxime may enter. Therefore, this doesn't reverse most of the CNS actions. Is also not true. Oximes are drugs of choice for carbonate poisoning. Actually, carbamate poisoning, oximes are not indicated. This is also not true. And the fourth is oximes should be used early in the treatment because given late, they may not be really effective because of aging of the enzyme. By aging, we mean removal of alkyl or alkoxy groups, one or many, and it becomes resistant to regeneration. So D becomes the correct statement about the oximes used in the organophosphorus poisoning. Antimuscarinic drugs, we may pose different type of questions to you. One is an antispasmodic, which relaxes intestinal smooth muscles directly by inhibiting phosphodiesterase subtype 4 enzyme and is also useful in dysmenorrhea. The answer can be more than one, but rotavirine is one because it has PDE inhibiting activity. Now this is a papaverine-like drug which acts directly smooth muscle relaxation. Another question could be enumerate three uroselective antimuscarinic drugs. Answer could be different set of three. One set is tolterodine, oxybutynin, solifenacin. And what then next question could be what is the use of derifenacin? Derifenacin is currently used to treat urge incontinence and frequency in overactive urinary bladder, which may occur postoperatively after prostatectomy, after neurological disorders or spinal injuries. And this is commonly used currently. Another question could be in the form of an MCQ, what drugs are useful in overactive bladder except? Now A is mirabegron, B is tolterodine, C is oxybutynin, D is carbachol. Now if you look at this, mirabegron appears to be a newer drug for you. It is a beta 3 agonist and currently recommended for this treatment. Tolterodine is uroselective antimuscarinic drug. Oxybutynin is also uroselective antimuscarinic drug. Carbachol is a choline ester which increases detrusal activity. So it should not be used. So the correct answer is carbachol. An anticholinergic drug which does not cross blood-brain barrier has bronchodilatory action and is preferred to atropine for pre-anesthetic medication. Now you have to think a lot before giving answer. Take time, think, and the answer is glycopyrrolate. It is also known as glycopyridinium. At present, this drug is topical inhaled bronchodilator, is also used as pre-anesthetic medication in place of atropine. Which mediatrix is preferred for fundoscopic examination in elderly? Why is this question important? Because any mediatrix which causes cycloplegia or any strong anticholinergic drug will produce problems by producing cycloplegia and by strong pupillary dilatation. There will be obstruction to the outflow of the aqueous and precipitation of glaucoma, raised intraocular tension. Now, this particularly is true for shallow anterior chamber in elderly. Now, the correct answer for this purpose is, see, the objective is for fundoscopy, retinoscopy, not for refractive error. Therefore, correct answer is phenylephrine. Phenylephrine is a alpha-1 direct agonist which can be instilled into eye to cause pupillary dilatation. It does not cause cycloplegia and may actually reduce intraocular tension by causing vasoconstriction in ciliary body. That is very important to understand. Next question could be why mediatric which mediatric would you prefer for the treatment of iridocyclitis? Now, in sharp contrast to above, look at this. The answer is atropine or hometropine because we need to provide rest to inflamed iris and ciliary muscles, and atropine, hometropine have longer duration of action and they cause cycloplegia. They will provide rest to ciliary body muscles. They will also reduce the painful spasm of the smooth muscles and prevent posterior synecdoche formation because inflamed tissue is at rest and retracted. That is important. Therefore, atropine or hometropine is the right drug for a treatment of iritis, uveitis in general, whereas phenylephrine is a mediatric of choice for examination, fundoscopic examination elderly. Now, many formats can be made. One format for asking anti-muscarinic anticholinergic is enumerate selective M1 antagonists, pyrinzapine and tilinzapine. Any use of them? pepticals. Any antimuscarinic drug which is used for inhaled bronchodilation, ipratropium, tiotropium, and glycopyrrolate. We have already discussed. Do you know any antimuscarinic agent developed for irritable bowel syndrome to control the colicky pain and diarrhea and IBS? Yes, answer is a quaternary ammonium compound, cymetropium bromide, is currently developed for this purpose. Which antimuscular drug is used for motion sickness? Usually, ideally, hyoscine or scopolamine is the same drug. It is promoted for anti-motion sickness use ever since its advent. How does it act is the natural question. Scopolamine is a vestibular sedative. It blocks cholinergic sites in the vestibular nuclei and in reticular formation, and non-selectively blocks the muscarinic receptors, and thereby it reduces inputs to the vomiting center. Therefore, a feeling of giddiness, nausea, vomiting is reduced. You can also be given another format, a structured viva format, where an anticholinergic drug is to be identified according to the clinical data. For example, anticholinergic drug of choice for pre-medication, pre-anesthetic medication is glycopyrrolate today. Atropine used to be. Now there are several reasons glycopyrrolate is chosen. Longer acting, devoid of CNS actions, which are seen in the atropine. However, its peripheral effects are like atropine. Therefore, it is used as pre-anesthetic medicament. Which anticholinergic is used for peptic ulcer? Pyrazine. We already discussed. Which anticholinergic can be used for intestinal colic? The large number of compounds. Dotravirine is one, which is a direct, smooth muscle relaxant and has less anticholinergic systemic adverse effects. Therefore, constipation may be less. Which anticholinergic is used by inhalation in chronic obstructive lung disease? Ipratropium hydrobromide. It is used because it is given by inhalation and reverses bronchospasm, improves ventilation perfusion in the lungs. Therefore, oxygenation is improved. Which anticholinergic is chosen for drug-induced Parkinsonism? That is acute dyskinetic reactions. Injectable promethazine and oral benzoxazole 2 to 10 milligram is the treatment of drug-induced Parkinson acute reaction. Which anticholinergic prepared for organophosphate poisoning? Atropine in high doses is used. This is one condition where 10 to 100 times the usual dose of atropine is required. Now, this is all about cholinergic, anticholinergic drugs. I will now come to adrenergic and anti-adrenergic drugs. I think the best question to be asked is life-saving uses of adrenaline, and the answer is cardiac arrest, intracardiac admission may be required, anaphylactic shock, IV, and laryngeal edema due to allergy, because it will reduce edema and save life by improving ventilation. Enumerate 3 nasal decongestants. Now, nasal means topical. Nefazolin, xylometazoline, oxymetazoline. How do they act? We may think they are alpha-1 blockers, but actually their predominant action is selective alpha-2 agonistic action, and they cause intense vasoconstriction when they are used in the nose. Now, another format could be you have to find out the indication for each drug. For example, what is the drug of choice in hypotension in cardiogenic shock? Answer is dopamine. What is the best drug for acute heart failure? Dobutamine. What is the drug of choice for spinal shock? Mephentermine. What is the drug of choice for postural hypotension in autonomic instability or diabetic autonomic neuropathy? Midodrine, which acts on alpha and beta, alpha 1 and alpha receptors in the arteries and veins. What is the drug of choice for nasal decongestion? Pseudoephedrine. And what is the drug of choice for prolongation of duration of local anesthesia? Adrenaline. So this is how you have to answer, by seeing the indication and identifying the indication. Now, which of the following drugs is not useful in narcolepsy? Narcolepsy is daytime sleeping. It can be interfering with the daily activities. There are many factors may occur at young age also. Modafinil is one. Pitolisant is a newer ST antagonist which has been used. Dexamethasone, dexamphetamine is the conventional drug which is CNS stimulant. Now, among these three, all three are used. If you look at D, promethazine, it is a sedative antihistaminic, so it should not be used. So, answer is promethazine is not used in narcolepsy. Now, which one of the following agent increases appetite? Now, adrenergic drugs reduce appetite. They include phentermine, dexamphetamine. Currently, low-carb serine is a 5-HT2 receptor agonist which has been used to reduce appetite by central action. Therefore, the only drug which remains is antihistaminic anti-serotonin drug, and that is cyproheptadine. Cyproheptadine has been used in children to increase appetite, although clinical efficacy has never been tried by a carefully controlled test, but it still has been used. Now, about alpha receptor blockers, two non-selective alpha blockers are phentolamine and phenoxybenzamine. What are their therapeutic uses? Their therapeutic uses are peripheral vascular disease, diagnosis and treatment of pheochromocytoma, that is preoperative, and chronic management of inoperable tumor also. Now, two limitations of the uses of non-selective alpha blockers, tachycardia, nasal stuffiness, and postural hypotension are common. And how can we obviate these limitations? This can be done by the use of selective alpha blockers. Now, this will tell the examiner that you understood the pharmacology of alpha receptors. Now, another format could be he or she may continue with alpha 1 blockers, enumerate some alpha 1 blockers: prazosin, bunazocin, doxazocin, elfuzosin, tamsulosin, silodosin, endoramin, urudapil. There are many others, but the first group that is prazosin, imidazoline-like drugs are common. Now, how is prazosin different from phenoxybenzamine, which is non-selective? Prazosin is highly selective alpha-1 blocker, and it causes less tachycardia. It is a balanced vasodilator, arterial and venous dilator, and it is used in the treatment of a number of conditions, peripheral vascular disease and hypertension. Next question could be, why do you say that prazosin causes less reflex tachycardia than non-selective blockers? Prazosin causes less tachycardia because it selectively blocks postsynaptic alpha-1 receptors and does not block presynaptic alpha-2 receptors. These presynaptic alpha-2 receptors are inhibitory. That means when they are stimulated, they inhibit noradrenaline release. And this inhibition is preserved when only alpha-1 receptors are blocked by prazosin and alpha-2 receptors remain intact and functional. In addition to this, prazosin may also reduce sympathetic output by acting centrally, and therefore less tachycardia is explained. Among the uroselective alpha-1 blockers, terazosin, doxazosin, elfuzosin, tamsulosin, silodosin, which one is highly selective and preferred for the treatment of benign hyperplasia of prostate today? The answer could be elfuzosin, doxazosin, or tamsulosin. We will talk about tamsulosin. It is preferred because it selectively blocks the alpha-1A receptors which are found in the bladder, neck, and prostatic tissue. Thereby, it reduces the outflow obstruction. The effect of the tamsulosin on alpha-1B receptor is minimum. Therefore, blood pressure lowering effect is also minimal. Now, it is also a good question to ask, why there is a combination of alpha 1 blocker is given along with 5 reductase inhibitors for the treatment of prostatic hypertrophy. The explanation is that alpha 1 blocker tamsulosin improves dynamic component of the obstruction to the urine flow by reducing tone of the smooth muscles of the bladder neck, the trigon and interval spectrum. So it is a quick action. So urine flow improves. And dutasteride, finasteride, which are 5' inhibitor, 5' alpha reductase inhibitors, they reduce growth of prostatic tissue, that is tissue proliferation. Therefore, it reduces the fixed component of the obstruction. And this effect comes over months of the use and is a slow in action. Therefore, two drugs are invariably compound for the treatment of BHP with urinary hesitancy. Now, what are the typical adverse effects of tamsulosin? Unusual adverse effects. One is retrograde ejaculation, dry ejaculation because of retrograde or failure of ejaculation. And second is floppy iris syndrome, which may pose problem in ocular surgery. There is a movement of the iris that is important. It's very unusual. Among the alpha agonists, you can match an alpha 2 agonist drug of choice for hypertension, an alpha 2 agonist for as adjuvant to anesthesia, alpha 2 agonist as a skeletal muscle relaxant, and alpha 2 agonist in the treatment of glaucoma. These are the four drugs. And the clonidine is for hypertension, dexmedetomidine is as adjuvant, tizanidine is skeletal muscle relaxant, acting on spinal supraspinal pathways, and brimonidine is a drug of choice for chronic simple glaucoma. About ergotamine, now this drug is basically classified as alpha receptor blockers, but has a multiple effects on multiple receptors. It blocks 5-HT1 and 5-HT2 receptors also, and directly it is a vasoconstrictor. The question is why ergotamine is used in migraine when it is alpha blocker and vasodilatation is the cause of the throbbing headache in migraine. The answer is ergotamine is a direct acting potent vasoconstrictor of dilated cranial vessels in migraine. It also constricts carotid AV shunts. Therefore, it reduces the stretch induced pain and neurogenic inflammation. So it is a drug of choice. Currently, it is less often used because of availability of sumatriptan and dose limitation. It should not be used in high doses, otherwise digital and peripheral vasospasm would occur. Now, one way of asking alpha-2 receptors could be what are the sites of alpha-2 receptors? Brain, peripheral tissue, and extrajunctional. Remember, platelets have alpha-2 receptors. So this could be another way of asking. And another could be what are the uses of clonidine? I told you clonidine is used in hypertension. Now why clonidine being an alpha-2 agonist is used in the treatment of hypertension? This is because it is a central acting drug which reduces sympathetic discharge by acting on the blood pressure center in medulla, particularly locus coeruleus and around. Not only is this, but clonidine and particularly newer drugs moxonidine, they activate central imidazolin subtype 1 receptors which stimulate when stimulated they reduce blood pressure. Therefore, central action on the alpha 2 receptor results in reduction in the sympathetic discharge. Now, another format could be what is the role of the extrajunctional alpha 2 receptors on the platelets? And the answer is alpha 2 receptors promote platelet aggregation. Any drug which is a alpha 2 receptor antagonist is a academic question merely because yohimbine is a drug, it has no clinical utility, is an experimental drug. However, there could be other drug used for the treatment of psychotropic disorders, psychiatric disorders or depression and may act through such mechanisms, and that is meanserin is an atypical antidepressant that block central presynaptic alpha 2 receptors. So there is a question for a good student who has really understood the subject well. About beta blockers, large number of questions can be made. I'll try to be uh, uh, brief and short, so and be little hurried. The how many types of the beta receptors you know? Beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, and many more may come. Now, these three receptors have clinical significance. Beta 1 receptors are present on SN node, cause cardiac stimulation, tachycardia. Beta 1 receptors are present on the JG cells and responsible for renin release. Beta 2 receptors are present on blood vessels and bronchi, and they are bronchodilatory and vasodilatory. Beta 3 receptors are present on fat cells, some other tissues, and they cause lipolysis. Now, it is amazing that beta 2 stimulation relaxes smooth muscles, that is by increasing cyclic AMP mediated inhibition of MLC kinase. So MLC kinase is not active, so there is a relaxation. That is important to understand. Other format could be name one beta 2 agonist and its use. Dobutamine is beta 1 agonist and is used in acute heart failure as inotropic agent. Beta 2 agonist, which is used as a bronchodilator and also as a uterine smooth muscle relaxant, is salbutamol and Ritodrin, particularly for uterine smooth muscle relaxation. Beta 3 agonist is used, I already told you, mirabegron, used in overactive urinary bladder. Now, one beta blocker that blocks beta 1 and beta 2 receptors, propranolol, one which blocks beta 1 receptor, atenolol, which blocks beta 2 receptors, betoxamide, only experimental value, and one which blocks alpha and beta is labetalol and carvedilol. They are good points to initiate a discussion, and thereafter identify beta blocker which blocks alpha 1 receptors, has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant actions, and is used to treat left ventricular dysfunction following acute myocardial infarction. Now this agent is carvedilol. One beta blocker which is ultra short acting is esmolol. And why it is ultra short acting? Because rapid hydrolysis by the red cell stress, unusual. Red cells also inactivate drugs. Any other drug which is metabolized by red cell, adenosine is rapidly inactivated by adenosine deaminase in the red cells and vascular endothelial cells. So this is in-depth study of the pharmacology. Now explain why propranolol should be avoided in diabetics or insulin therapy. It should be avoided because of one reason, and that is delayed recovery from the hypoglycemia. This is because reduced hepatic glucose output by neoglucogenesis, which is beta 2 receptor mediated, which are blocked by propranolol. And second is hypoglycemia unawareness, obtaining adrenergic manifestations of the hypoglycemia, that is tremor, tachycardia, and nervousness as the warning signs. They are lost. These are beta 1 and beta 2. So therefore, always prefer a cardioselective beta blocker, or you use nebivolol in diabetics because it improves insulin sensitivity. In general, cardioselective beta blockers are preferred, but there are situations where beta propranolol is preferred. Thyrotoxicosis, migraine prophylaxis, essential tremor. These three conditions, propranolol is preferred and better than cardioselective. Three beta blockers which are used in the prophylaxis of migraine are propranolol, metoprolol, atenolol. Three beta blockers which are very well studied and found to be useful in improving survival in chronic congestive failure are metoprolol, carvedilol, and bisoprolol. These are the evidence-based medicines actually. Now, if you match the vasodilatation mechanism of beta blockers, celiprolol, nebivolol, betabolol, betaxolol, and tilisolol, and others are vasodilatory. I have chosen four because of different mechanism of action. Celiprolol is beta 2 agonist, so it is vasodilatory. Nebivolol is nitric oxide producing beta blocker. So it is vasodilatory. Betaxolol is calcium channel blocker additionally. Therefore, it is a vasodilatory. And tilisolol is a potassium channel opener. Therefore, favors relaxation. So these are the underlying mechanisms of beta blockers, which are vasodilatory in nature. Enumerate two beta blockers which also block alpha receptors. We already discussed labetalol and carvedilol. Now, what are their uses? Labetalol is a drug of choice for pregnancy-associated hypertension, including preeclampsia, and carvedilol, I will discuss, is the drug used in chronic congestive cardiac failure. Which beta blocker would you select for a young female with migraine headaches for prevention? Propranolol. For chronic simple glaucoma, Timolol. For a patient undergoing general surgery develops paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia during anesthesia, Esmolol. For a young female who is anxious and develops palpitation, tremor before stage performance, Propranolol. A patient diagnosed with inoperable pheochromocytoma, labetalol, and patient with chronic heart failure, carvedilol, because it improves ejection fraction. Now, in the last about the autonomic drugs, some drugs in autonomic system are used as a diagnostic agents. Methacholine challenge test in identifying bronchial hyperreactivity in bronchial asthma. Adrofenium tensilon test to differentiate myasthenic versus cholinergic crisis. Phenylephrine and cocaine to identify site of lesion in Horner syndrome. Phentolamine test is an old test for diagnosis of pheochromocytoma, and dobutamine stress test for diagnosis of ischemic heart disease, stress test when patient cannot perform exercise. These are the tests, diagnostic uses of the autonomic drugs. So this is all about autonomic nervous system. Now I will move to, so it is all about how you should learn pharmacology of ANS and PNS and appear in the Viva with confidence. For any questions, you can access me. I will upload this presentation to my YouTube channel, which I am starting now. And very soon, within a couple of days, I will also upload the questions, my presentation on antihistaminics and other drugs, that is drugs acting on autocoids and treatment of bronchial asthma. Thank you for attending this session. Good day.